Alright guys, thanks for tuning in to another battle report. This is a live game that I played a couple weeks ago. I'm just getting around to making the report. Just been pretty busy lately. It's been nice. I've gotten some live games in recently as opposed to just playing on Universal Battle. UB is great and I really enjoyed the tournament, but it's certainly no replacement for the real thing. I also noticed that when I was playing a lot on UB that I wasn't painting and modeling as much, because it's so much easier to just open up the computer and start playing. But I had a lot of fun with these recent games and played a couple of really good opponents, really good guys. I'm starting to think we're finally getting a small group going here in Colorado Springs. So we got a couple players, or at least people who are interested, and so hopefully things will continue to grow. And I'm working on a couple of demo armies, and we'll hopefully get Pathfinder status with Mantic soon and be able to run some small events and that sort of thing. So I met this guy Rich for a game, played my Griffin-themed Brotherhood army against his Kingdoms of Men. So here are a couple shots of deployment. We did Kill and Pillage, so points for killing as well as for the markers. This is a 2,000 point game. So starting left to right on my deployment, I've got a unit of the Order of Forsaken, a regiment. I've got an Exemplar Redeemer. He's the mounted character, and he's got the normally he's got the Onyx Ring. In this list, I don't know if I took that, but normally it's the Onyx Ring, which gives him 4+ regeneration, which is really nice. Next to him is my Order of the Abyssal Hunt. Still haven't finished painting the riders yet, so they're just horses. And then continuing with my Griffin theme, I've got some lions here. These are from Reaper, and they represent my villain reconnoiterers, so my recon troop. Across the board, my opponent has a regiment of knights. He's got a army standard bearer mounted, a unit of shield wall, and then another regiment of knights next to the hill there. Behind the knights, I think, is where he had his wizard, and he takes his wizard fully loaded. He's got the Inspiring Talisman, which is a great pick for the wizard, and then a whole bunch of spells. So he has at least the Bane Chant, and I think Heal and Fireball. So it gives him a lot of variety and options to use in support. Next to them is another shield wall regiment. Up on the hill behind them are 2 troops of archers, or bowmen. And then right next to the tower there is a general on winged beast. And on the right side of the board, again left to right for me, I'm using my standard bearer there as a exemplar hunter, and he has wings of the honey maze. Then I've got another troop of lions, another recon troop. And then I'm using some Empire Demigryph Knights for my Order of the Redemption. Order of the Redemption for Brotherhood are the elite of the elite. They're the best knights on the list. They have regeneration and they are inspiring. I really love this unit. I'm still torn on taking them. If you have feedback, let me know. I'm probably going to start toying around with not using them just because they are a very expensive unit. I think they're like 260 points without any magic item. I usually give them Brew of Strength just to help them out in case they get caught in a grind or they lose their Thunderous Charge. In this game, I gave them Makor's Potion of the Caterpillar, which gives them Pathfinder, and that's why they're sitting behind this forest. But please, if you have feedback, I'd love to hear it. Then I've got some Great Eagle or Giant Eagle models, which are from The Hobbit from GW. And those are representing another Order of the Forsaken regiment. And then I've got a horde of spears. Now these guys I'm probably not going to use anymore. I just really love my martyrs a lot, and I don't feel the need to use spears. What I might start doing so I can use the same models and have it make sense is take a horde of martyrs and give them the Amulet of Thorns, which gives them phalanx, and that way it makes kind of sense with them holding the spears, but I can still use them as martyrs. I'm not a huge stickler for that anyway, but in this list I wanted to do that. So I think I think in this list they're just spears. But this is a 1,500 point game, so that's why it's a little bit smaller force. I normally have 2 hordes of martyrs. Again, martyrs are my favorite infantry unit in the game. I just absolutely love them. They've been MVPs many times in many games for me, and just clutch. So continuing on in my opponent's deployment, next to his general and winged beast, he's got another regiment of knights. So that's 3 regiments of knights. No magic items on any of them. And I think I didn't mention that the general does have the Medallion of Life, so he's got regen. And then his last unit, that horde, another shield wall. So he had used polearm units before, and in this list he was trying out shield wall. I think shield walls are excellent units. They're just really cheap for what they are. They're a totally vanilla unit. They're just like 4s across the board, standard nerve, standard everything. But they're just cheap for what they are. So especially taken as a horde like this, I like units like this. They just, I think they're really worth the points. So that's our deployment. And I won the roll for first turn. So here we go with first turn. On the left side of the board, I've got my Order of the Forsaken, the griffins there. I just barely put them in the forest so that they can see through the forest, so I can get a charge off next turn if I feel so inclined. Same thing with my Exemplar Redeemer. He's over there to keep everything inspired and lend some support, but just barely touching the forest. Move up my Abyssal Hunt and my Lions, and the Lions are there just to screen the Knights to make sure I get the charge off. And on the right side of the board, I move my Hunter, my Exemplar Hunter, up behind the tower in the center. He's got fly, so my plan is to next turn move him behind his lines, either go after the bowman or just kind of disrupt him and start harassing him from the backside. My Lions on this side move into the forest, just positioning next to my Order of Redemption, who move up on top of one of the objective counters. And again, I've got Pathfinder on them, so whatever he moves up, I can freely charge out of the forest and still get Thunderous Charge. I also move up my Order of the Forsaken, the Eagles, and positioning to maybe get a flank or fly over his head and get behind him. And the Spears were stuck in the pond there, so they just move up, regular advance move. So in his turn, he moves up here. I stayed just out of range of any charges from his knights, so they just kind of advance up. They get out of the pond that was in front of them, so they're not going to be hindered if he gets a charge off. And he moves up his shield wall, and they're placed just inside the forest, so if I do charge him, I will be hindered. Then his other knights are coming around my flank side there, which this was a good move, and I should have read into this a little bit more. What I was hoping to do, which we'll see in the next few slides how it works, my intention was to bust through the left side there and then just turn to the right and be able to face him. And I'm hoping to do that before they can get around behind me. His shield wall regiment over in the center starts moving up towards that objective. His bowmen take a few shots, and I think I've got some pictures of that later. And on the right side, he continues to move up. Very aggressive. I like this. I'm usually very aggressive in my play style, and he's got the knights too, and so this was a good game for that kind of play. I like how he moved his general here. He moved over into my flank, so that gives me a lot to think about. I really don't want my Order of Redemption knights to get a flank charge from his general. His knights move up, and they're facing all my knight units. His horde shield wall moves up on top of that objective. That's a great position. He can sit there and hold it, and if I try to charge him, I'm going to be hindered, and that's a big unit to charge like that. So that's the end of turn 1. Actually, not quite the end. I forgot this picture. He moved his wizard up into the forest there and used Fireball to do a couple wounds on my recon troop. That would have been really bad for me if they had been wavered, but it was just a couple wounds and didn't make the nerve check, so they're fine. So beginning of turn 2 here, the way my knights were positioned, if I had charged his knights, I would have been hindered. And instead, I took a gamble here and I charged his shield wall. And my thought process here was If I can knock them out, turn and face the knights, they'll get 1 charge on me, but then they're going to get wiped off next turn because I'll have a lot of things coming at them. I also moved over my Order of the Forsaken, the Griffins. I started thinking about the threat of this other regiment of knights coming around behind me, and I was anticipating what was going to happen with my knights in the middle here and just hoping to get a flank charge off on something. And on the other side, I made another risky move. My Order of the Redemption and my Order of Forsaken both charge his knights. My Redemption are not hindered because of Pathfinder. The Forsaken are, because they're landing in the pond there and they don't have any magic items. So they're there just to do a couple extra wounds and also screen my Redemption Knights from the Horde if things go wrong. My Recon Troop, I charged his general. I knew I wasn't really going to do anything here. I just wanted to get in his face. This is a silly move in hindsight. I really should have left them up to protect the flank or the rear of my Knights. But we'll see what happens. And as planned, my Hunter flies up over everything, and now he's going to go after those bowmen. So my charge on the left side pays off. That's what I was intending. I'm able to wipe out his shield wall, and then I turn my Abyssal Hunt Knights to face his Knights, and turn my Recon Troop to face the opposite direction. I'm protecting the rear of my Abyssal Hunt, but I'm also staring down his Knights, which are on the other side of that forest, and looking at his Wizard, so I'm giving him things to think about there. Of course, my Recon Troop, being hindered, doesn't do anything to his general, so he's just going to fly over my head, and they're not going to be of much use next turn. And my other charge on his Knights pays off also. Again, in hindsight, though, I think this is a little bit poor positioning. I'm worried about his Horde in the pond right there, so I just face my Eagles to him, so it'll be a front charge and a hindered charge. But it's still, 25 attacks, something like that. And as a regiment, the Order of Forsaken, they've got defense 5, but it's a 12-14 nerve, so it's not huge. He doesn't have to do a whole lot of wounds to put them in threat of being routed. My Order of Redemption Knights, I just I didn't know what I was doing here, I guess. I was worried about the flank charge from his general, which is behind me in the forest. So I positioned them in a way, I basically backed them up from the charge. And this way, they're slightly in the forest so that if he does take a flank charge on me, he'll be hindered. So that's what I was going for there. We'll see how it pays off and how things play out. So in his turn, he gets some charges back on me, sends his Knights into my Abyssal Hunt. His other Knights are now behind me. They're slightly touching the forest, so they can see through it now. So that's a danger to me. His shield wall in the center continue to move over the obstacle to get at that objective marker. So something I didn't see on this side of the board was that when I backed up my Redemption Knights and turned my Forsaken Knights, I left the rear open to his general, and I just wasn't thinking that he even had that. I thought he was going to take the side charge on my Redemption. So this was a mistake. The Order Forsaken might have had a chance of surviving, maybe just being wavered from the Horde, because again the Horde is hindered. But taking a rear charge from his general like this, there's no way they're going to survive, I'm guessing. And he does the same thing with his Wizard, moves around to the side of my Recon Troop, fireballs him again, does another couple of wounds, and this time gets a waver result. And here we see the mistake in allowing my Abyssal Hunt Knights to be charged. I really like the Abyssal Hunt Knights. They're a really cool knight unit. I didn't realize how good Fury is, and it's paid off for me in many games. That's where you get to countercharge even if you're wavered. And they also have Vicious against monsters. Instead of having Thunderous Charge 2 like most knights, they have Thunderous Charge 1 and Crushing Strength 1. So that really helps them a lot as well. But the downside to them is that they only have a 4+ defense, whereas most knights have a 5+ defense. So allowing them to take a full charge like this was just a poor choice for me. That's why I have the Recon Troop near them, and that's why I leave a character near them for inspiring, because when they do get hit, they've got a 15-18 nerve, which is a really strong nerve, but just taking a full charge like this from knights was just not a good move on my part. So he's able to kill them off. Now the only things I have facing him are my Redeemer here and the Forsaken Knights, which are down below in the forest. But again, he's got his other regiment of knights behind me here. And of course, my Order of Forsaken on the other side fall to the double charge, both frontal charge from the Horde and the rear charge from the General. So yeah, he repositions. I've got my spearmen over on the right side. So he's kind of turning to face both my knights and them, depending on how I reposition. He does pivot enough to get out of the charge or the front arc of my Redemption Knights there. So both his units are safe from any charges from me right now. So I skipped ahead in my picture taken here and went straight to the result of a combat here. I took a double charge against his knights with my Order Forsaken and my Exemplar Redeemer. This is a strong charge for me. The Order Forsaken have 9 attacks, Thunderous Charge 2, hitting on 3s, and the Redeemer has 5 attacks, hitting on 3s, and he's got Thunderous Charge, I think he's got Thunderous Charge 2 and Crushing Strength 1, so he's pretty strong, hitting on 3s. And the thought also is, if I don't kill him, they have no more Thunderous Charge, but I'm really hoping for the kill here so that I can turn around and face his other knights. Unfortunately, as you can see, I do a fair amount of wounds, 10 wounds, that's really good, but I botched the nerve check with a 4. So that is a wavered result for his knights. Even that would be decent for me, except for they have Headstrong. My hunter in the back charges the side of his bowman. I'm a character, though, with individuals, so I don't get to double my attacks. So I only do a couple of wounds and don't roll well on the nerve check, so they're unaffected. At least they can't shoot. On the other side of the table, at least I can reposition things a little bit here. Again, nothing was in my front arc of my Redemption Knights. I really needed to get a charge off that round, but I just turn around. I've got stuff on either side of him now, which is good. So my spears are moving up on that side, and then I've got my recon troop and my Redemption. His general, of course, can just fly away, but we'll see what he does in his turn. So because his knights were wavered on the left side of the board, it left my rear arc open to his other knights. They did have to go through the forest, so they're hindered, but it's tripling attacks, and that's just not going to go well for me. And he does take the charge on my unit there instead of my character, which is a smart choice. His wizard moves over, and I think he attempted a Bane Chant on his knights, which is smart because, again, they're hindered, so adding that Crushing Strength could help him a lot just in case he gets bad rolls. On the other side, he was kind of pigeonholed in since I'm surrounding him, so he decides he's going to try to punch through my strongest unit there and charge my Redemption Knights. He does a double charge with the Horde and his general. The Horde is going to be hindered because they were moving out of the pond and into the forest, but the general is unhindered. And then he also takes his shield wall, which was in the center of the board, and instead of just standing on that objective, he's starting to move around the tower now. And that's a smart move because it's giving me more to think about. If he doesn't kill my knights, then I've got a lot to deal with there. And last bit of the moving phase, he countercharges with his bowmen. I did a couple wounds to them in the previous turn, so they are disordered, so figures might as well. So in the shooting phase, what you don't see here is my recon troop. His bowmen up on the hill were able to do another wound or two and then pass the nerve check, or succeed in the nerve check to rout them. The rear charge, of course, works on my Forsaken. I think he had the Bane Chant on there, or he may not have even succeeded in the Bane Chant roll from his wizard, but again, tripling attacks, there's not a whole lot that can stand up against that. He also had charged my character with his Standard Bearer, but I think he just bounced off. And then check this out on the right side. So on average, he should do about 6 or 7 wounds with this charge. I crunched the numbers on it, and that's what he does. So they have a 15-17 nerve. They've got a strong nerve, so I'm hoping they'll survive, regen a few wounds, and then I can countercharge. But he rolls an 11 on top of the 7 wounds, and 18 is enough to get rid of them. But of course they have Inspiring, so I make him re-roll it, and he gets another 11. So what can you do? Sometimes that's the way it goes. Just a couple of good nerve checks there. Take out my strongest, most expensive unit. So he turns his horde around to face my spears, and his general doesn't have a whole lot of room, but he turns to face my recon troop. So in my turn here, I'm kind of grasping at straws at this point. His Knights Regiment here has 10 wounds on it, so I charge him with my Exemplar Redeemer and hope to finish them off. My Hunter also charges the Bowman. And on this side, I charge his Shield Wall Horde with my Spear Horde. And I didn't do a good job with this picture, but what you can't see is that there's just enough forest that they are landing on it when they charge in. And the rules state you touch any part of difficult terrain in a charge and you are hindered. So that's unfortunate for me, but that's really good placement on his part, and just a good move. My recon troop, I just reposition over here. They are actually out of the arc of that shield wall there, and out of the arc of his general. So whatever he does with them, hopefully they're going to be able to lend some support next turn. My Redeemer succeeds in taking out the Knights that were over here, and I just move him d6 forward. I was just thinking if he survives a charge, I can get behind the pond or scurry around a little bit so that his Knights get hindered. And if I get lucky, maybe after a couple of turns of something, I can take them out. Again, he's got regen, so he's survivable. And he's an individual, so it doesn't matter if he charges my rear or my flank, he's not going to get any extra attacks. My Hunter succeeds as well and kills off the troop of bowmen that are up there. He's going to go after the next one. And things don't go quite as well for my Spearmen. Of course, they're not going to finish off this horde in one charge. The nerve is like 21-23 or 19-21, something big like that. But I was hindered. I was hoping for a few more wounds than 5, but I get 5 wounds against his shield wall. And in his shooting phase, the bow troop way up on the hill there fires some shots at my recon troop here, my Lions. They do 1 wound, and he rolls 10 on the nerve check, and they are a 9-11 nerve, so he takes them out. Do not underestimate bow troops. They are super cheap. I think they're like 65, 70 points, something like that. They usually only manage a couple of wounds, 1 or 2, if they hit. But it's just enough to roll nerve checks, and that's really what you need. I really like these guys in his list because they just add that annoying couple of wounds here and there, and they just cause nerve checks. So if something's already wounded and just needs that extra wound to do another nerve check, or it just gives you lots of opportunities to keep rolling nerve checks so that eventually you roll a high one and take out a unit like this. So he charges my Redeemer and does 9 wounds on him with a charge from his Bane-chanted Knights, but botches the nerve check on this side of the board. So I really needed this roll for my Knights on the other side of the board, but he gets it against the Redeemer, so now my Redeemer hopefully can heal some wounds and do some damage back. We'll see. And of course, counter charges with his Shield Wall Horde. They do 10 wounds because they are not hindered. Whenever you countercharge, you're not hindered. So if you take any wounds in the charge and you countercharge, you're unaffected. And so he got to roll just straight up on this and does 10 wounds. That's a good solid hit against my Spear Horde. My Redeemer regenerates a couple of wounds and moves around the side of his Knights. I countercharge with my Spears. Not a whole lot else I can do here, just hoping for some good rolls. I didn't show in the last slide during his turn that he had moved his general up on top of the objective marker in the pond, and that puts him in position for a flank charge against my horde. And I do another 5 wounds, so they're up to 10 wounds, but I don't waver them, don't rout them. Just not a good nerve check on this one either. And I use my Hunter to go after his Wizard. He had left his Wizard just inside range, forgetting that my Hunter had wings of the Honey Maze and could fly over there. So I'm going to ignore the other Blow Troop for now because the Wizard's worth more points. So in his turn, he turns his Knight Regiment to face my Exemplar Redeemer. He's never going to catch him if I don't want him to, but I got to do something with him. But he does charge me with his Standard Bearer. And this time he takes out my spears. He's got the combined charge of the shield wall horde and the side charge from his general. General was hindered, but still it's 10 attacks with crushing strength 3. And then, of course, all the attacks from the horde. So it was enough attacks this time to get a good nerve check and take him out. And then in the last picture here, his shield wall is turned around again and moving back over towards that objective marker. I just called the game at this point. After losing that spear horde, that was my only chance of like being able to do much of anything. I don't even think I could still scratch it out for a draw unless I just got some amazing rolls and and if my characters were able to take out some units. But this is a really great game. The way it started off early on in the game, I was thinking I had the upper hand. I took out a couple of his knight regiments pretty quickly. Took out a shield wall regiment. So I was feeling good about it, but when I lost my redemption knights in the middle, that was a rough blow. I think I could have done a lot better in this game if it hadn't been for that. And then just some miscalculated positioning for me and not really thinking a turn or two ahead. So something I still need to work on. I struggle a little bit, I think, at this point level at 1,500 points. I don't really like the spears. I think I'm going to get rid of them. I think instead of taking the hunter and the redeemer, I might just take the exemplar forsaker. He's a flying monstrous hero, and I usually give him the armor upgrade, so he's defense 6, and that guy is just a beast. So if I played again at this point level, I think I would switch things around a little bit. But still making some mistakes and could use some improvement in how I'm positioning my recon troops and my knights. So really fun game though. I made some mistakes and he capitalized on them. He's a good player, good opponent. I like his list because it's not, he doesn't try to really maximize or overdo or cheese out on items and stuff like that. And he's got knights and he's got infantry and he uses them well. So again, those bow troops, the bowmen, just tend to do that 1 or 2 wounds that causes a nerve check, and you just got to roll lots of dice. The more dice you roll, the more chances you have to get rid of units. So it was a very fun game, and I should have another battle report soon from somebody else that I played who plays orcs. Thanks for watching.